a natural extension to the Workday platform. So if you think about it from a talent perspective, Workday already knows your people, your org structures, and the pathways that your employees take, allowing you to seamlessly deliver personalized and recommended content, whether that be on your desktop or mobile device. Furthermore, since Workday Learning is core to Workday's platform, reporting is native and eliminates the need of having to sync or maintain multiple integrations or security models. Let's quickly review today's agenda. I'll be introducing the customer speaking team in just a moment, followed by, we're fortunate enough to have Overstock.com with us here today, a billion-dollar retail company, to talk about their journey to Workday Learning, and then a product demonstration where we'll actually be jumping into the Workday Learning application. And then we'll carve out a few minutes at the end to get all your questions answered. So please put those into the chat window. I see there's some already coming through. If we don't get to all your questions, then we'll have your local account executive follow up with you and make sure to get those addressed. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce you to today's speakers, Jordan Fossen, who's an HRS manager at Overstock.com, and Jacob Schur, who's a solution consultant at Workday, will be taking us through the Workday Learning application. So Jordan, would you like to introduce yourself and talk about the journey to Workday Learning?
Yeah, sure. Hello, everyone. My name is Jordan Fossen, as Mike Wynn just stated, and I am the HRIS manager at Overstock.com. I would assume that I have many of the same responsibilities that hopefully a lot of the people on this call today have. And really all I'm trying to do today is just give you Overstock's story when it comes to our learning management system history. And so really, yeah, so that starts with, first, I'd like to just give a little history about Overstock, so hopefully you can relate and see where we are in comparison to your own organizations. We might be a little bit further along in Workday, maybe we're right in the same frame that you are in. Then I'd just like to speak about why Overstock's leadership team chose Workday's learning platform over the incumbent at the time. And then just lastly, but certainly obviously not least, I'd like to just discuss a few of the benefits that we have or that we feel we have that come from choosing the Workday Learning platform, especially now that we've been live on it for a little while. So to begin with, I want to tell you our story. We went live as an organization on Workday in 2014. It was a little bit of a phased rollout, so we initially went live with HCM and then followed that with payroll and recruiting. At that time, Workday didn't have learning as an offering, but we were part of the early adopter program when it was available, and we went live on learning. I think now we've been live on learning for just about 2 years. So I think in Workday terminology, that makes us a bit of a pro when it comes to how to use Workday Learning, but we're obviously still learning as well. So before we went with Workday Learning, we were on Skillsoft LMS, and we're using their own generated content. Now, obviously, we are on Workday's LMS, and we partner with a third-party content provider called Video Arts. They provide some of our content. We also provide a lot of our own content internally, as we have a training department that creates a lot of that. There are several things that were consideration items during our transitions of the learning management system, and I wanted to call out our pain points on our previous system. I just want to note that I'm not intending to say that these were issues that everyone utilizing that product may experience or have, but they were experiencing these issues when we were with them, and maybe they've improved, et cetera, since then. So those are the facts. These are going to be some of the factors that let us want to leave that system and look for a new LMS. So there's really 4 factors that the executive management team finally dwindled it down to, and I just wanted to talk about each of those in turn. The first was that we at the time didn't feel like the content that we were being provided was current. We thought it was a little bit stale. And obviously as an e-commerce company, we are often on the early adopter edge of technologies, to say the least. Actually, oftentimes we drive the creation of new technologies internally ourselves. So we needed content that was at least current, if not a little future thinking. And the technology, once again, that we were utilizing just wasn't able to achieve our desired goal in that regard. So we felt that our LMS at the time was built for content first and then for the platform second. And I think that may be a familiar pain point in the industry where a lot of the content providers a lot of the LMS providers are also content providers, so they have different focuses of emphasis. Workday, as just a platform, has spent a lot of time focusing on just making sure the platform is good to use. So that was one of the issues at the time that we were having, was just that the content wasn't there, and we felt like they were focusing on their content first as opposed to expanding the capabilities of the actual platform. Number two, the second item for them really was just that it was too expensive for us. I don't really know what else to say about this. Maybe several of you are in a similar boat, but we just felt that it wasn't worth the expense that we were paying for what we were getting. The third reason deals with the mobile experience of the LMS. At that time, the incumbent didn't have a good mobile offering, or really one at all. Obviously, this is a huge competitive advantage of Workday, as they tend to build everything on mobile first and then scale it to their desktop applications. So that was a huge selling point for our organization, was that learning was mobile friendly. And it's true, and I'll talk to a little bit more about that later on. So that was one of the things that we were particularly concerned about, and one of the reasons why we left our previous LMS provider and went over to Workday. The last one, they kind of classified it as just not innovative enough. So we had a strong feeling that the current company that we were partnering with just wasn't going to go anywhere anytime soon. They weren't offering new offerings, or really weren't updating their software in any real apparent way when it comes to value. Their platform was pretty stagnant. This was a concern, as we already thought them a little antiquated in their content. So as I believe everybody on the call is already live on HCM, you know, Workday, one thing you can't say about Workday is that they're stale. They always update their software, and we always are current on the most current version. So that's been a huge advantage to us, is that as the industry changes and as things become more focused on and other things drop off, Workday continues to build their application around those things that are more important to the organizations in general. So those were the factors that we considered when leaving the other LMS, but the reasons why we actually ended up joining or going with Workday as opposed to other content providers out there were a few. There's three that I want to talk about on our call today. So the first one was, perhaps like many of you, we were already live on several Workday products. So being able to leverage Workday as our LMS had built-in advantages. We were live at that point in time, right, on Workday, HCM, payroll, recruiting, and a few other advanced compensation, performance, talent management applications. And so it was really a nice fit with the rest of the suite that Workday was offering. And always, and this might be something that you face as well, is that we are just, especially in my role, we're constantly struggling to find the right balance for application diversity. Meaning, you know, there always seems to be a new application that you can purchase that will solve some niche problem that the company is facing. We face that all the time. So the problem with continuing to just partner with other providers and have unique instances for each problem was that the tech debt becomes quite a burden for our internal IT departments, as each new application requires a lot of support, and as well as just in general user fatigue. So having our associates have to log into several different systems to accomplish what they're trying to accomplish, either in their job or in their career, has a legitimate fatigue element to it the more applications you use. So that was a huge benefit for us, and Workday was that, you know, it's all in one, and we reduce the amount of fatigue that our associates feel in trying to accomplish their job. And we really have come from a place where we did have our associates logging into several different applications, and obviously we're not down to just one, at least not yet, but we have been trying to scale down the amount of applications that we have to interface with, so that associates can just become more competent in the few that we do have. Really, that's once again targeting the fatigue issue. So we saw that training was also often on its own island. This kind of deals with the administrative side of the application. The content wasn't delivered at the right time for our users. So an example of this would be that it was hard to coordinate the HRIS system with the learning system to deliver content to associates in a timely manner, such as when an associate was promoted. It was hard to target those audiences. Unless, of course, you have an unlimited resource in the headcount you have for your training department, which is a luxury that I currently don't have. So just syncing the systems took a lot of time. Having it all in Workday allowed us to just really focus on the target audiences and really focus on more strategic, I guess you could say, placement of content. And I'll talk a little bit more about that a little bit later here. So the last thing that I'd like to say regarding the several applications and the ability for just Workday just to be one was that we noticed that there was a distinct population that would binge train on the LMS, almost like a Netflix binge. But then they would stop coming back until the next time that they would just binge training again. So they'd watch an enormous amount of content. Maybe they had like a Friday that was boring for them. They'd watch an enormous amount of content and then not watch it again. We felt like it was a reasonable assumption that there wasn't a whole lot of learning going on in those instances and that they were just trying to perhaps fill their free time. So sorry for a little bit of a sidetrack there, but what I'm really just trying to focus on is that Workday was already used by our associate population, so having them be there for learning was a big win, especially for our associates, as they didn't have to learn yet another application and another user interface to accomplish their roles or their jobs. I'd also like to say that one thing that in retrospect has been a huge advantage is that using Workday has allowed us to get much more sophisticated in the offerings that we distribute for specific targeted audiences within our organization. And I'll speak to a couple of examples in a moment, but it's really enabled us to hit the associate at the right time with the right content, which has been obviously the dream when it comes to a learning management system. So another big win for us was that Workday has a strong mobile presence. We have a highly engaged workforce that loves to use their mobile devices. So we thought this is an ideal solution for our associates. I'd also like to add that in Workday 30, mobile can now utilize SCORM packaging, which made the application just that much more useful as we integrate with third parties for a lot of our content and do so utilizing SCORM packages. I don't know the technical prowess of everybody on the phone call here, but that is a huge advantage when partnering with any content provider or even internally generated content. SCORM packaging is one of the main things we utilize to display content and interact with content. So that they can do that on a mobile device has been a huge win for our organization. And then perhaps not the strongest selling point, but overall a huge win for our internal stakeholders at Overstock was the ease of use for our administration team on the platform. Utilizing the Workday Business Process Framework as well as Workday Security Framework was an enormous advantage. Previously, we had a dedicated super user, or a couple really, that did nothing but try to manage the administrative tasks on the LMS, going in and loading content, trying to sync these lists, and a whole host of other use cases that I could provide. But now that we're on Workday, the whole training department is enabled to do, when appropriate, administrative tasks, but really can spend substantially more time making sure that our training programs are effective for the various associate populations that we interact with internally, which is a huge win, right? So less time spent doing administrative work and more time spent being strategic with our LMS, which is, I think, another big dream of most LMSs. So those are the main reasons that our executive team decided to go with Workday, and hopefully that helps with some of the questions that people on the call may have. But now I want to just focus on some of the benefits. So we have been, once again, on the learning platform for about 2 years. And I wanted to just kind of talk about what life is like being on this side of the fence. So hopefully, for the first impression, my ability to want to make this call or take this call is at least some testament to the Workday's product longevity in their LMS system. 2 years on any application sometimes helps users decide that they either do or don't like it. We still love Workday's learning platform, and we don't see that changing anytime soon. So as always with Workday, there is the power of one that you just have to speak about, and that's especially true when speaking about learning. Just to highlight some of the points that I may have previously spoken on, but really just to drive it home, this will be the biggest selling point in my mind, and it has been the greatest advantage for us. Today we're just much more effective at delivering content to the right target audience at the right time. There's been a huge shift in the HR landscape currently to really focus on onboarding and the user experience, and a huge part of that is being able to deliver this content to them in an appropriate manner and in an appropriate time. So one example of this that may be relevant for those who are a little more technical on the call is that we've embedded required learning campaigns right into our business processes. This means at the moment, for an example, an associate is promoted from an individual contributor to a manager, or from a manager to a director, any type of promotion that changes their management level or perhaps responsibilities. They're tasked with several required learning content pieces at the time of that promotion. So, and also, instead of them being hit with 30 or 40 pieces of content at once, Workday has the ability to tranche these campaigns, meaning we can deliver small pieces of consumable content to them and in day one, and then depending on different criteria, X amount of days later, or when they have been able to consume that content, we're able to deliver more. So tranche B or tranche C. So they can also interface with Workday Learning in some pretty user-friendly ways. So we've configured Workday currently to send them a notification when they do learning, and they can just select that link in Outlook, or they can go into Workday and use Workday's worklist to get into their learning and see the required learning there. That's a big win, particularly in that it has increased the amount of content that users actually consume. So we can deliver it at the right time, and we can deliver it to the right people. We feel like the information that we're trying to provide has significantly more staying power. They're actually consuming it, and hopefully, depending on the I guess the intent of that learning content, the outcome would be derived. For example, somebody who's just going from an individual contributor role to a manager role, it's a hard transition, and we really want to make them feel like they're empowered to make that transition. We do that through required learning, through campaigns that we deliver through Workday's LMS. Another advantage of the complementary nature of this is just how we manage Workday overall, or how we manage learning overall. Right now, we give everyone a score, which is comprised of their learning that is completed over their learning that is required. So if you have 10 required learning pieces and you've completed 5, your score would be 50%, right? We can display that information in other parts of Workday, which make it even more usable in performance reviews and other types of talent management situations. So for us, like at a glance, you can, as an associate or as a manager, go to a performance dashboard and see where you're at or where your team is at when it comes to required learning. So you can have those follow-up conversations and talk about the learning content, etc. And you can assign learning to them in those conversations. It makes it a lot easier to navigate those perhaps sticky conversations that organizations have. Another thing that we like is that we just expose learning, and this might be unique, but we expose learning on our job profile. So we have recommended learning, so that if associated on their career interest tab, or if an associate wants to grow in their career, they're able to see what it's going to take for them to get the skills required for that next step, and we do that through learning as well. We just tie it directly into our performance and our job profiles. So I'm out of time here, but I just wanted to really just point out again in conclusion, and I don't want to steal Jacob's thunder on the demo, but I am available to have follow-up conversations. I know I didn't get into the details here, but again, in conclusion, for Overstock, Workday's LMS was most certainly the way to go, and we continue to grow our return on investment from this decision, and really love the partnership that we have had with Workday. So with that, I'll just kind of turn the time back over to, I think, Mike. We'll turn it over to Jake.
No, it's Quinn. But thanks, Jordan. Really appreciate you sharing your use cases and your experience, and we really value the partnership with Overstock.com. So thanks again. So at this point, I'd like to transition over to Jake, who's going to be taking us through the Workday Learning demonstration.
All right, great. So what I'm going to do is start out by sharing my mobile device here. And so kind of from a demo perspective, what you're going to see is what it looks like for a typical learner to come in and do just that, hop into Workday Learning. We're also going to look at it from the desktop perspective, and then also spend a little bit of time as a learning administrator looking at things like learning reports and dashboards, as well as a little bit of content management. And we have been seeing your questions come across. We're going to spend a little time at the end to address some of those. As you can imagine, with a number of attendees asking questions, we might not get to every single one. We will absolutely be following up and also making sure that we get everything addressed as we can. But without further ado, what you see right now is my iPad. So again, I mentioned I'm kind of coming in as a typical learner. In this case, it's Marcus Severino. So the mobile application should look pretty familiar to you, whether or not you're on the iPhone or Android. Right next to the places where I might be taking time off or looking at pay slips, I can go ahead and jump right into the learning worklet, which is going to bring all of my learning right to me. And again, you like to think about those consumer grade applications that you use in your personal life, whether or not that's Netflix or Amazon Prime. These are things that you didn't really have to take training to understand and use. That same design concept is absolutely true with Workday Learning. So what you're seeing, and I'm just going to orient you to what Marcus has right here on his iPad, is the learning that's being pushed to him, not only at the top and along the left-hand side as I scroll down, but also the way for Marcus to go ahead and explore on his own. So I'm going to go ahead and dive into detail and into all of these different elements. But at the very top, what you see is a campaign. So campaigns can push individual lessons or content, whether or not that's video or SCORM or instructor-led training, or entire courses to very tailored groups of people within your organization. So that can be based off of a number of facets, whether or not that's job profile or location. You can also trigger these campaigns based on Workday events. So if somebody's going through onboarding, or let's say they just became a new manager, they're going to have tailored coursework pushed to them in a very simple way. So if I go ahead and jump into this Customer Service, a Key to Success course, what you're seeing are some high-level details. So things like, hey, this course is required for you, a description, things like skill level. Again, a lot of basic information here, contacts for this course. But then you see that this course is made up of a number of different lessons. So Workday is always going to be tracking completion and know maybe where you left off. But it's also accommodating a number of different kind of mixed lesson types. So just to dive in, if I wanted to go back and review, a particular piece of video content, the video is built right here within Workday. So again, just as you saw at the beginning, this is exactly what Workday looks like, because learning is part of Workday. So just as you'd expect in terms of the video player, it's completely interactive and consumer-like, but you also have the ability to, as a user, make changes to your playback options. So oftentimes, a lot of our customers, depending on their industry or whether or not they're a global organization, some folks may or may not, English might not be their first language, so they might need to slow things down to understand it. Or if they're watching something very technical in a manufacturing sense, you can actually slow down the playback speed. And if somebody's listening to a longer lecture, you also have the ability to speed that up. So the nice thing about this is you don't sound like a chipmunk in terms of the content, or slow motion. If you slow that down, it actually keeps the same tone. What you'll also notice is we have smart streaming. So based on my connection, so whether or not, again, I'm on my mobile device and I'm walking down the street, and let's say I have a couple bars 3G in terms of connectivity, Workday is going to know that, detect that, and knock that down to probably 240p. But if I jump into my office and I have full Wi-Fi, again, Workday will detect that and let me know, and I'll be on full 1080p. And the reason we have that is because think about using video in your own personal life. If you have a buffering experience that's frustrating, chances are you're going to drop what you're doing and move on to something else. That's absolutely true within Workday as well. So if people are unhappy with their experience using Workday Learning, their chances are the user adoption isn't going to be there. Just to touch on a couple other things, as I mentioned, we definitely support many different content types. So we're looking at, you know, a PDF here, instructor-led training, being able to bring in other content types as well. Courses and lessons are also very interactive. So if I wanted to comment or tag people on specific learnings, I have that ability to do so as well. And if we go ahead and jump back into kind of the prescriptive way that Workday is pushing things towards learners, you can see that we have a couple of different categories. So things like based on your interest. So basically, if you're familiar with Netflix and you have favorite genres, and you select those genres, Netflix sends you those types of movies or content. Same concept here. So if I go ahead and change my preferences, you know, let's say I want to learn more about, let's see, workplace safety. That's a very exciting topic in sales and marketing. I can make that change, and as I set my preferences, that's going to update based on your interests. Of course, you're going to have required training. So whether or not that's annual compliance training, or maybe the finance department has a set of content that needs to be completed, that's going to be pushed to those users, whether or not that's through a campaign or required training. A little bit of a social aspect, so looking at things like recently added or most popular. And then at the very bottom left, what you'll see is recommended for you. So this is based on more of a algorithm approach. So being able to understand, you know, Workday knows what your job profile is, what your location is, what your tenure is, you name it. A lot of these Workday facets can be built into an algorithm that's going to prescribe content that is then recommended for individualized users. So again, lots of ways where things can be pushed to learners. But on the right-hand side, if I'm, you know, feeling a little adventurous and I want to delve into things that are of interest to myself, I can jump in and find things by topics. And you can have unlimited topics, as you can imagine. I can search through a typical kind of browse experience. So if I want to go ahead and look by my favorite instructor, you know, maybe I learned particularly well from Amelia Cassius, or if I wanted to use just plain English, maybe I want to take a big data course or understand more about big data, I can very simply use plain language and go ahead and search and find that type of content very easily for myself. So we notice that you have the ability to go in there and kind of jump in and find things that are relevant to you. But we also have enroll functionality. So if you don't want people just jumping in and learning, maybe you require them to actually enroll in courses. You can also enable that. So instead of just jumping in, they're actually going to have an enroll button. And we're utilizing Workday's business process framework. So that's going to go ahead and route to a manager or let's say a learning administrator for them to approve that and then move through. Of course, you have the ability to see, you know, what you're enrolled in, drop courses, understand progress. If I wanted to go ahead and look at things that I have not yet started or things that are required for me or I'm in progress with, I can very quickly go ahead and jump in there and kind of check the boxes and go through. And you'll also notice within the thumbnail, you'll see in progress. You'll also see whether or not it's a course or a lesson, but you always have that ability to go ahead and drill in and pick up where you left off and see all the details related to that. And you may or may not have seen this before, but if you have you know, the little blue dots next to the lessons, that's actually going to show whether or not you've completed that, and it lets you kind of move through at your own pace there. Something we also utilize, and this is actually something quite a bit within Workday internally, so Workday on Workday, is peer learning. So if you want to make it more of an engaging experience and allow your learners to jump in and create their own content, you know, they have the ability to create a new lesson. And again, I'm on my iPad here, so I can very quickly kind of add titles and topics here. So I might type in how to use Workday, right? And I might assign a couple of topics. So this might be a technical skill and Workday learning. I can add a description, and because I'm on my iPad, I might just use dictation. Bear uses Workday. So I can add that. And as you can see, I'm going to be able to access content on my mobile device, but I could also access this through other types of Content Cloud or Workday Drive, which we're going to see a little bit later. And so this is actually a video on my iPad, and this is my dog Bear, and he's actually using Workday Learning. That's how easy it is to use, right? So all kidding aside, I'm going to go ahead and use this short video. Workday is actually doing all the heavy lifting for me. So in terms of managing different types of video files or dealing with that from an administrative perspective, Workday is pretty well video agnostic. Doesn't really matter in terms of the file type. You can also put acceptable use policies. So hey, maybe we don't want people updating or uploading video to the site with dogs in it, right? But again, this is going to be part of a business process, so we can always push that forward, and that's going to be approved by a learning administrator. So that's what I wanted to show from a mobile perspective. And now what we're going to do is go ahead and switch gears. I'm going to go ahead and show this from the desktop. So again, we're still signed in as Marcus Severino. He's a typical user. And as you can see, I'm going to go ahead and jump into my notifications. Due to the types of comments and notifications that are built into Workday, learning can absolutely be built in into that framework as well. So as you can see, Ben Adams is letting me know, hey, you should check out the opportunity graph video. And if I wanted to access that content, I can go ahead and view that lesson right here within my inbox. We see the ability to have the ratings and comments. Of course, you can disable those if you didn't want users to have that. But the opportunity graph seems like a great place to go ahead and check out. So if I go back to my home screen, and let's say Marcus has not checked out the opportunity graph before, but that learning content was great. So let's go ahead and see what that's all about. So for those of you who have not seen or heard of the opportunity graph before, this is basically telling Marcus, based on what his role is today and based on how people have moved within the organization. Again, Workday is tracking all this information, and that's just part of core HCM. But it's saying, hey, you're a customer service agent today, but based on how people have moved in the organization, 35% of your colleagues moved on to become senior customer service representatives. Another 18% moved on to become managers within global support. You kind of get the picture there, but this is beyond just a nice little analytic. I can go ahead and dive into the manager of global support and understand, hey, what are the qualifications that are going to help me get there? So things like skills, competencies, education. With Workday Recruiting, I could actually apply to this role or refer colleagues or friends. But more importantly, we are in a learning demonstration. So why is this important? The opportunity graph can also suggest top learning for this particular manager role. So if I want to climb the ladder, so to speak, how do I get there? Well, guess what? You can actually tap into these individual courses and lessons and start to complete those as we go through. So again, as you can see, lots of different applications for learning. It's not just some additional siloed solution that you're jumping into. It's just very much living and breathing within Workday, and I'm able to manage that here. Just as you'd expect, if I wanted to go into my profile and understand everything about who I am, including my performance and career, learning is going to be right next to all the things that I'm used to seeing. So whether or not that's job interests, career interests, or just personal information, this is showing me kind of a transcript of sorts. So things that I may or may not be enrolled in, but I haven't started, my in progress, and then also my learning history. And that's tracking everything from the date that I enrolled, completion status, attendance, grades, and scores, especially attendance for instructor-led training, which Workday Learning accommodates as well. But I also have that ability to go ahead and maybe review these things. So if I need to refresh back on particular content, I have that ability to do so. And one more thing that I'll show from the learning perspective, and just to show you that consistent experience, whether or not you're on the desktop or mobile, if I go ahead and jump into the learning worklet on the desktop, as you can see, very similar look and feel. You want that to be easy for users no matter how they're accessing the content. So that's what I wanted to show from kind of a typical learner perspective. We are going to switch gears now, and we are going to sign in as Logan McNeil. So she is somewhat of a superwoman within our demo tenants here. If you've ever seen a Workday demo, chances are you've seen Logan McNeil. And in today's case, she is a learning administrator. So she has the ability to not only approve content, manage content, but also see different reports and analytics related to learning. So to start out, if I go ahead and jump into the inbox, what you'll notice is that business process for the content that Marcus created is being pushed to me right here within my Workday inbox. And I can review that content right here within the inbox, see all the details related to it, the titles, descriptions, etc. And you'll notice that the cover image, I did not input that on the mobile device, but Workday, especially for video, it'll just create a thumbnail for me. And then I, of course, have abilities to send that back. So maybe, hey, Marcus, this is great, but the audio is a little fuzzy. Do you mind re-recording that? Or, hey, no dogs in our learning content. Sorry about that. No problem. Otherwise, if I approve this, that's going to be available for me within the content library, or I can make that available to everyone just to consume immediately. Again, peer learning is something that a lot of our customers are taking advantage of today, Workday included. It's something that I participate in within Workday. So a great way to keep engagement up for individuals and enjoying the learning experience within Workday here. So let's go ahead and jump into more of the learning administrator side of things from a reporting and content management perspective. As you can see, these are just a number of different standard delivered reports within Workday, particular to learning. So looking at things like course completion status, learning content by rating, seeing things like most popular media or courses based on how many views or the completion of those items. Learning enrollment status. So, if people are trying to enroll in courses and things are getting held up, maybe their manager is on leave or whatever it might be, you can always keep tabs on that. Learning by location. And then what we're seeing a lot of is somewhat of a gamification with learning leaderboards. So you can assign units or point values to learning to drive user adoption. So by example, you're seeing here, you might have particular individuals that are going through a lot of content, and you can reward those folks. So we have customers that do kind of monthly learning drives, and maybe it's a gift card or some other sort of prize for those folks that complete a lot of learning. Just as you'd expect with reporting and analytics within Workday. Again, this is all live and it's all driven by Workday data. So maybe I want to understand, hey, are there particular courses or issues? Why are people not starting their learning? I have the ability to drill in and understand more about that. So you've probably heard the concept within Workday of curious clicking. Hey, if you want to know more about something, guess what? You have that ability to click in and learn more about it. So is there a particular manager that is responsible for her learners or his learners where they're not necessarily starting their coursework? Maybe that's Amelia. Oh, why is that? Is it a particular learner? Is it a particular course or lesson type? And maybe that's the introduction to Workday Learning, which we just rolled out yesterday. So again, you're able to answer these types of questions just simply by drilling in. And just to highlight the ability to bring in HCM data side by side with learning data, we talked a little bit about the enrollment in that business process. I probably want to understand, and if I just view all the details related to this, if people are enrolling in courses, that means they're interested in learning and they're maybe trying to advance their career. What we're seeing here by drilling into the folks that have not yet been approved is not only learning type information on the left-hand side and other details related to their job profile, but we're also seeing things like performance and retention risk, as well as succession plans, the learner's manager. These are all configurable. So, you might have other facets within Workday HCM and that type of data that you want to view. But the point is the power of one, right? So that HCM data is very simply able to be utilized side by side with this learning type data. So if somebody's trying to get enrolled in a course and they're being held up, and let's say they are a high retention risk, or we notice that they're top performer, we probably want to take action on that. We also might want to understand what succession plans they're attached to. So again, that power of one is pretty important within here. We also have the ability, as you can imagine, to create a little bit more in terms of custom or kind of reports that are a little bit more pertinent. So if I wanted to look at, let's say, learning by, let's look at learning by tenure, by example, and you can, of course, set a date range or have those types of prompts within reporting. This is going to show me things related to, hey, what's the most popular or most relevant course material for different tenure. So for the folks that are within the organization for 5 to 10 years, they might be looking at very specific content. On the flip side, we have folks that have been with the organization for 10 to 15 years, and they're doing less learning. That's a way of understanding, hey, do we need to do more internal marketing? Do we need to work with this particular group to keep them engaged? But again, this is bringing in other types of Workday data and making sure that they're able to, get through content and utilize Workday Learning to its best. So if we go back into the learning administrator role here, what I might want to go ahead and drill into a little bit is course content and managing courses and lessons and instructor-led trainings, et cetera. So you'll notice here you'd be able to create courses or lessons from scratch. Today, what we'll do is go ahead and jump into a course kind of that's already been created. And just to show, this is very much a faceted search where I can quickly get to blended course material, specific course creators or content creators, instructors, locations. But if I go ahead and jump into the Big Data Technologies and Trends course, I can view this as a learner to understand, from Logan's perspective as an administrator, hey, what does this look like to the learner? I can enroll my team. You have an enroll team button. I can also manage wait lists and understand that as well. I can look at high level administrative things and also who's enrolled. But if I wanted to just edit this course in general, I have the ability to either update this version or add a new version as of an effective date. You can set those controls in here. You're going to have the basics that you'd expect. So, hey, what's the course description, title? What topics is this assigned to? Do we need to require enrollment for this course? Typically, that's for more instructor-led training or VILT. And I can also look at things like, hey, who's the contact person or duration of the course. I can also lock down courses based on security categories, just like anything else within Workday. But you also notice that we have points. So maybe for that gamification or for coursework. Cost. So a lot of organizations are measuring how much this learning activity is costing their organization. Then we're getting into really the building blocks of this particular course and the lessons that make that up. So we might have a couple of different pieces of video content, external content, media. To add a lesson, I can very simply come in here and either pick media or external content. I'm going to go ahead and place this in the 5th order, and we're just going to call this example for the sake of simplicity. And then what I'm able to do is access the media. So of course I have the ability to manage that through my computer, but Workday Drive, if you're not familiar with it, if you've ever used something similar to Google Drive, it's that same type of experience where it's pretty much a folder file type view. So I can manage my learning content. I can go ahead and jump in here. And as you can see, I have all different types of content. So maybe it's a SCORM file. It could be a simple PDF, or it could be a video. Let's go ahead and put in this particular SCORM file here. That's going to be part of this Big Data Technologies and Trends course, because golf is important to that. And then I can also add surveys as well. So if I wanted to kind of have a course survey, maybe I want to have a level 1 course survey at the end to see how people are doing in this particular lesson or course. I can go ahead and submit that. And of course, as an administrator, I'm going to want to see if I have things in here correctly. So Workday is always going to let me know, hey, you need a title for the courses, or I need to manage these and put these in a particular order, right? So I always have that ability to have these safeguards as well. So that's kind of the way that you'd come in here and manage this course content and push that out. If we go back, and let's go ahead and spend a little bit more time with Drive. We'll discard this for now. This is where, again, you're going to be able to manage your content from an administrative perspective. But something that is pretty interesting within Workday Learning is the ability to also have the content, being able to edit that media. So if I go ahead and as you can see, this is very simply a video, but you'll notice there's little tick marks within this particular video. So if I go ahead and play this, once we get to those tick marks, you're starting to see that we have some interactivity popping in. And the reason is because within Workday, we have what we call interactions. So I can actually edit this media right here within Workday. So you can see that I'm now in draft mode. And I have the ability to very simply select within the video, hey, I want to put in a multiple choice question. So, I can say, what logo do you see? All right. And I can say Workday. That's the correct answer. And I can say no idea. That's the wrong answer. So I can go ahead and add that in. I also have the ability to bring in open response text notes. So maybe in a particular part of the video, I want to say, hey, pay attention to this. That can pop up and stay there for a set period of time, or once a user clicks through. You can also add in captions to, whether or not that's different languages, or for folks that are, have difficulty hearing. And then also you have the ability to set disable forward skipping. So if you don't want people watching a long video and just saying, yeah, I watched this video and skip forward to the end, I have that ability to manage that in here. That's going to publish this out. And then once I view that, I'm going to be able to see that interactive content as I built it in. So as you can see, once it gets to that point, it's going to bring up these multiple choice questions. Very simple to administer and build into our courses. One last thing before we actually go into campaigns a little bit, and I'm going to go ahead and look at managing enrollments. So this is a way for somebody like a learning administrator or a manager to set very specific groups of people or audiences and push content to them. So as you can see, this is a faceted report. We have the different HCM and just typical facets on the left-hand side. As you can see, we can get very granular with these. So if we wanted to send this to particular job profiles or locations or management levels, these are just a couple of examples. Let's say I want everyone in the accounting department, right, to take a particular course or age group or whatever it might be. I then select them, and I have the ability to enroll them in specific courses. So maybe I want them all to be in the Big Data and Technology and Trends course. I can select all these folks. And what you're going to see is Workday always recognizes, hey, this individual doesn't have access to this course, or hey, this individual might have already taken that course. But otherwise, it's very simple to create kind of groups and save those types of searches and utilize them for our campaign functionality. So just wanted to highlight the ability to very granularly push content to individuals. So if we go back to our Learning Administrator view and we go ahead and jump into our campaign dashboard, this is going to drive a lot of different learning to individualized groups, as well as how people are moving within the organization. Campaigns can be set based off of Workday events. So audiences, as I mentioned, can be created off of Workday reports, very similar to what we might create or save within the manage enrollments report there. But otherwise, again, it can be based off of Workday events. So if I wanted to manage a campaign. So let's go ahead and look at some examples that we have here of some learning campaigns. It might be date driven. So every year, January 1st, that's when we do our compliance training. We can set that date and then have courses and lessons be pushed out in a very prescriptive way to everyone or a very specific group of people. Customer service content. So let's say somebody just became a customer service representative. They moved internally within Workday. Workday recognizes that job change. In that new role, they have very specific things that they need to go through. That can be kicked off as a campaign as well. Onboarding, right? Somebody's new to the organization. So you're a new manager. They've become a manager within the organization. They need to learn how to manage. So let's go ahead and look at what the administration of these campaigns looks like. So again, this is So You're a New Manager campaign. And we see immediately that this is where you're able to specifically push out content based on dates, based on those events, and then also send content relative to completion or deliverance of these different courses or pieces of content. So again, if somebody's becoming a manager, you probably don't want to overwhelm them and assign a lot of learning right off the bat. You can actually stagger it and have that set up kind of in more of a staged approach where, hey, after they've completed these courses, 30 days later, they're going to get another course. So if I wanted to edit this or add another item, by example, I might want to say, welcome to management. And I'm just going to go ahead and put a notification in here. So of course, lessons, courses, and notifications can be pushed out. I can set this up to be both email and push notification within Workday. I can tailor specific messages. So, just letting them know, hey, a lot of learning coming down the pipe. You're going to have some work to do. I'm just going to put in some gibberish here, but as you can see, you can format these and have templates for that. And then this is where you can actually stage when that learning is going to be pushed. So do you want to send this on a particular date? Maybe you have instructor-led management training that you need to start. So that could be date driven. It could be sent based on the completion of another item. So Workday is going to know the other lessons or courses within this particular campaign. So after they complete the first time as manager, or again, these are going to be triggered based off of Workday events. I can also set due dates, etc. Otherwise, I'm just going to review this, save that, and that's now part of that campaign, as you can see. So again, it's kind of a way of creating a learning path and sending that through to new managers. And again, that's going to be based off of what happens in Workday. Workday knows what's going on and who people are. And so those campaigns are going to be easy to set up, and it's all part of Workday. So that power of one is really at work there. So that's pretty much what I had lined up to show in today's demonstration. I know this was pretty high level, and it was pretty quick to go through this, but really just wanted to give everyone a look. Excited, especially with things coming with Workday Rising and other announcements. But otherwise, Quinn, are there any questions that we can address? Or
yeah, there's actually quite a few, and we're probably not going to be able to get to all of them, but we'll do our best to address them. Right. So I think one of them that I see here is in campaigns, can you manage enrollment automatically by certain HCM facets? So, for example, job change, becoming a manager, or location.
Yep. Yeah.
That was asked actually a couple different times.
Yeah. So that's pretty similar to actually what we showed. So yeah, if somebody goes into a new job profile, or even if somebody changes office locations, think about all the data that you have within Workday HCM. You have that ability to trigger campaigns based off of those specific facets. So, yep.
Okay, great. And then, can managers view their team's learning and enroll them in courses manually?
Yep. So we saw that from somewhat of the perspective of a learning administrator, kind of managing and putting people into a specific course. But you also have the ability to view your own team. So actually I can kind of quickly, if I look at kind of my team's management, I should be able to find that. There we go. What you'll notice is, this is just a basic dashboard looking at where my team is in terms of performance reviews, any other kind of things that you have lined up here. but you also have the ability to jump in and see something like My Team's Learning. So obviously as a manager, you probably want to see specific things related to learning. So completion dates, grades, scores, duration, if points or costs were assigned. So absolutely, and that's using Workday's security, right? So again, Workday Learning is part of Workday, so you're going to be able to utilize that same type of security in terms of visibility. So a manager is likely only going to be able to see their team, their immediate team's, content and completion and those sorts of things. Yep.
Okay, great. And then somebody asked if this was going to be recorded. This is absolutely being recorded, so we can distribute it out.
Absolutely. Yeah. So anyone that had, audio issues, we definitely have that lined up for you. So we'll be sure to share out this recording as well. Yep.
There was another question. I think we addressed this in the demonstration, but can you disable skipping forward and video content? Pretty sure you showed that.
Yep. Yeah. So yeah, people don't want people going to the end of a long video to skip it. Yep. You can absolutely do that. Yep.
Okay. And then as it relates to the reports that were shown on today's demonstration, do those need to be built from scratch, or those standard reports? Can you maybe comment on that?
Yeah, so when we were in the learning administrator dashboard, those are all delivered standard reports. So, pretty much out of the box, right? But again, as I mentioned, if you wanted to look at, HCM data lined up with learning data, that's just a matter of creating those types of reports and having that type of, information side by side. You can build those out. Absolutely.
Okay. And then there was a question about peer learning. So can peer learning be turned off or restricted to certain users?
Yeah, so I get that question a fair amount. So, you might have acceptable use policies and those sorts of things. But beyond that, if you wanted to lock it down so that only, your executives or specific learning content creators have that ability to upload their own content, again, you can utilize Workday security to kind of manage that and drive that. So, yep.
Okay. Is there a way to track in-person training? Yeah,
so we didn't get into instructor-led training too much, but I can go ahead and kind of quickly jump into that. But yeah, absolutely. Instructor-led training is built into Workday as well. So very similar to managing courses or lessons. If I go ahead and look at scheduled offerings, this is where instructor-led training or virtual instructor-led training can be managed. So if I go ahead and just look at the customer service, a key for success, what you'll notice is it has a similar structure in terms of what type of lessons I have within here, but we also have instructor-led training, classroom training, or virtual training. And in terms of understanding our offerings, obviously it's going to be tied to a specific location, instructors, date, and time. But I can also schedule new offerings as well. And so it's going to look very similar to what we saw before when managing that. But it's going to be instructor-led, friendly. So showing all the information that I'd need for having those physical locations. So hopefully that answers that question.
Yeah. Okay, and just time for a couple more quick ones. Is there any Outlook integration with that, or how does that work?
Yeah, so today it is currently basically a calendar invite can be built into that. We do have Outlook 365 with things like recruiting, and so those are currently on the roadmap, and with 31 coming soon, that roadmap is going to be updated. So look for updates on that in terms of specifically when that will be coming out, but that certainly is on the roadmap to have that Outlook connectivity. Yep.
Okay, great. It does appear that we're up against the top of the hour, so just want to thank everyone for your interest in Workday Learning. Last thing I'll say is that we do have Workday Rising coming up October 1st and the 4th. It's a great opportunity to learn more about Workday's capabilities and optimize your current investment and network with your peers and other customers. But I also want to thank the panelists today, and thanks everyone for your interest in Workday.
Thanks so much, Quinn, and thanks everybody. One last housekeeping item here. We did cover this off at the beginning, but I did want to point this out again for those of you who might have joined late. And this is our safe harbor statement. Just want to let you know that what you saw today was the latest version of Workday, that being Workday 30. And based on what you see in the demonstration, want to make sure that you make decisions based on what is available today. Workday is great at delivering on roadmap, and we might talk a little bit about futures in the demonstration. But again, please make decisions based on what you see today.